where to start
Wherever you
because
want.
it's so many things. So to begin with, um, what I saw in the labor, or what we call la obra, in between couples as obreros, I would see, and it's ironic to say this because the cult or the church, the light of the world, will not acknowledge this. Um, we were taught, kind of like what the Bible says, the sisters or women have to learn in silence at home. So if we had questions, and I say for myself, if I had questions within the group of missionaries, within the obreros, or if I wanted to question the responsible who was at that time, or if I had a question and I wanted to bring it up when deacons or pastors, whenever they would go supervise us, oh yeah, I was not allowed to ask those questions because, hermana, you have to ask your husband. And I'm like, well, I'm asking you because I want to learn. We'll talk later about certain things. And it was always just questions about how to be a better spouse of an obrero, of a missionary, to be able to project that obedience to the sisters, to the church, because we were the number one example for the brethren in Australia. So if I had a certain question or if I didn't understand certain parts of the Bible, because obviously reading the Bible was a major requirement every single day for obreros. I don't know how it is out there in other parts of, I'm going to say the world, because wherever all these missionaries are at, they have different, well, yeah, plans, different projects, different purposes, but most importantly, what they all share in common, it's the reading and, well, yeah, the preaching of the Bible, what we would call Bible studies nowadays. We all have to gather around and we would pretty much have to read the Bible for an hour or so because it was, what is it? It was an invite. That's what they would say. The servant of God invited us to read every single day. But then again, it's like you come down to certain parts and you ask your husband, and if your husband doesn't know, as an obrero, well, that's a good question. Since the ministers that are going to come pretty soon, we can write them down. So that's what I would do. And I would just feel humiliated. And yes, I'm going to have to say it, not because I want to expose this brother, but whenever it was Mano Jonathan Mendoza, I would ask questions, and right away the answer was like, just looking at me with that dead eye, like, you did not just ask me this in front of everybody. And I would even ask the sister. I'm sorry, Tia Tabby.
Es bien déspota ese hombre. Oh,
Yeah, yeah, he is.
sorry.
Like I'm sorry, but I would say define machismo, Jonathan Mendoza,
Oh, yeah. Absolutely,
big time.
100%.
And it's
Love him.
embarrassing, right? Because you believe that these ministers were humble, were loving to the obreros, just people who were barely starting in the ministerial body. No, they were really harsh on them. I'm pretty sure other people can say the same thing. People who are not in the cult no more, or inclusive people who are still inside the church, they will tell you, yes, unfortunately, this brother's like this and like that, this sister's like this. So I would feel humiliated. I would feel in a way neglected because with those answers that I would get, it would make my marriage seem like, oh, hermano, you're not teaching your wives the right thing because they have and they feel the liberty to be questioning cuando we're just here to supervise. So certain things like that, speaking, um, I'm gonna say supposedly spiritually or in faith wise, that's how I would feel. Um, we can also, well, I can also say that just the couples around me, there was a lot of machismo, especially a lot of competition. We're gonna put it in that sense.
Can you
There were
explain
a
a
lot of
little bit more?
obreros. Even though we were all companions, how we would call companions in the labor of the Lord.
That's right.
So funny, right? There was a lot of competition to be the best obrero, to
What
be
does
the
that
best in
mean?
the group.
What is the best obrero?
It means that you had to follow a certain protocol, be pretty much like on the top of your prayers, like the number one, be the best to explain yourself when you give the sermon to the church. Make sure everybody understands point A, point B, point C. When you give orders to the brothers or invite them to participate in any sort of activities, make sure your message gets to them to the point where they obey and they would pretty much give their time to come help. And if they wouldn't, it's because, oh, it's because you guys are too soft on them. Like, what are the ministers going to say whenever they come and ask, is the church helping out? Oh, no, brother, because, well, we went to go visit them, but they don't want to. Well, that depends on your tone of, on your voice, the tone of how and which way you're speaking to them. Are you using biblical verses? Are you inviting them to come to church because the invitation came out from servant of God? O sea, like all these things, you know? And whenever supervision was done, why I say that there was a lot of competition because it wasn't equal within the couples.
Can you
Um,
hold on a second? I want to ask you
yes.
something. Explain to me what supervision entails.
Okay.
I know what it is,
Supervision.
but I want the
Yes.
audience to know.
Okay. So from what I remember, it's been a while. So let me try to recap what supervision was. Ministers would go depending on where they were sent to, the church of origins. They would go in this case to Australia. So we had to, well, we as obreros, we had to make sure that there was enough fundings for the minister so we can either pay for his hotel, and if there was no money or funds to make him feel comfortable, we would have to accommodate ourselves. So they would pretty much give the biggest room to him. And sometimes we would also, well, not sometimes, majority of the times, we would have to pay for their meals for the certain amount of days that they would stay. We had to be, well, yeah, welcoming. We had to buy him, toiletries, just towels, new bed sheets, bed sets, pillows. Make sure that whoever was in charge,
It,
they would take their days off from work to be with the minister whenever the brothers or the pastores or deacons, whenever they would get there. It was always like, oh, brother, do you want to go eat here, or what do you want to do, or let's go visit certain brothers or sisters who are not coming to church too frequently, or let's go visit the people who you guys are preaching to. So they
Okay.
would go. Yes.
You know what? I'm going to stop you right there, and I
Mm-hmm.
just because I want to emphasize something is it boggles my mind
Mm-hmm.
how you guys are new in the ministry in la obra, okay, in
Mm-hmm.
the labor. I don't know what they call it, but I think it's the labor, right? And you go out there, you're barely surviving, right, Kevin?
Yeah.
They're barely surviving. They're, can you imagine what kind of jobs they had? Like she was talking about how they don't pay you well, so you're out there
No.
on your own trying to survive, trying to all pitch in to pay for an apartment, to pay for food. Some of you have kids, some of you do not. Then when a minister comes for that supervision to visit you guys, you have to provide. That is just crazy. Instead of them
It
saying,
is.
you know what, guys, I know you guys are going through a lot right now. Why don't we treat you guys? They come from a big
Mm-hmm.
church, they have
Mm-hmm.
to do it. Yet they take advantage of you guys, and you guys are the ones that have to cater to them. That's just crazy. And I wanted to emphasize that because it's a big sacrifice that these obreros do out there, like you were, Mija, and it just boggles my mind how they take advantage. There we go again with the abuse that they do, and the brainwashing that they tell you that's your responsibility, that you have to
Yeah.
pay for their hotel, you have to pay for their food, and the worst thing is they don't just take any little thing. They think they're all that in a bag of chips, and they deserve to go to those nice restaurants.
Oh
Sorry,
yes.
Kevin. I have to emphasize that because, Ex Obrera is telling us these things so quietly and nicely and soft. And
Like
it's
it
just
was nothing. Yeah.
like, Mija, that's a lot
It
I
is
want
a
to
lot.
that you did.
thank you, Theata, because this is a good pausing point. So I want to flush out more by rewinding a little bit back, right? So just real quick, because this would kind of add more emphasis to what Thea is saying, um, without adding more, because we just, oh God, I want to hear it. But was the changing of bed sheets, furniture, was that forcibly changed depending on the rank of the visiting minister? For example, if a deacon was coming by, was there an expectation that there had to be new bed sheets for this deacon? And if another deacon arrived, was the same thing expected, or could they sleep in the same bed sheets if it were washed?
Honestly, from the times that I remember, for every supervision that we received, depending on the rank, exactly how you're saying, Kevin, that's what we would spend the money on. So if it was a deacon, oh, que no pase más de 80. Okay, but don't get me wrong. You want to give the best because you believe that these are
Right, you love this.
representing,
Yeah.
right?
Blessings.
The
Were you
servant of
giving
God.
were
Yeah,
you
like
giving of your 10% salary for that, or was it part of the
mm,
90 you were
this
giving
was
up?
part of the 90 in Australia,
That's okay, that's an important note.
along with whatever it is that the brothers, out of the goodness and the kindness of their hearts, would donate in the offerings. So, on
Okay.
top of that, okay? So, since we did have like memberships at Costco, sometimes we would go all the way to the city, or we would make sure somebody would go and just get, of course, the best quality per se from Costco. So it just depends. And it was just up to whoever was responsible and also how much money we had saved. What were we allowed to spend? So we did have a budget, but it was always that. So if it was Hermano Guillermo Victorin and his wife, oh, let's get him this and this because the brother, like, he was somewhat specific and special in certain things. If it was Mano Jonathan,
Of course.
and this is something I learned, and I want to thank you, Mana Suzuki. I don't even know why I still call them hermanos. I want to thank Suzuki because she taught me. Depending on the rank that the minister has, that's the treatment you're going to give them.
Mhm.
You are not going to give just an encargado or a responsible brother the treatment of a deacon. You should not give the treatment of a pastor to a deacon. And since the max rank within the ministerial body, it's pastor, you give the treatment of a pastor how a pastor should be welcomed. Obviously, you're not going to give them the whole shebang how you would give
A
to
thousand
according
cred, thousand thread
right
sheets.
to
Yeah,
to
yeah.
the apostle.
Right.
But she expected us to be able to differentiate, if that's the correct word I can use,
Yeah.
to each minister that would go and supervise.
Okay.
um so it just depends on who the minister was, who was the one to pretty much, yeah, brainwash you into believing that ranks were the most important, and
Yeah.
how would you show that respect through economic and financial status.
Thank you for that. Okay, so I want to rewind a little bit back to what you said about competitiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we understand based on what you said and about the prayers, about who did this, who explained themselves better, who was more willing. I find that that's relatable to me
Yeah.
as a guy because I went through that, right? But again, that was my experience and what I've been coming to learn and this whole starting this podcast is that there is another perspective that I wasn't aware of. And that is the perspective of a woman. So I know what the competitives look like amongst the males. What did that competitiveness or that drive to want to serve, what did that look like for the sisters?
Well, it all depends, and well, it varied depending on who was there as obreras. Um, Intellectually speaking, I can say we were all almost at the same level. We knew, what to do and what was expected from us. We knew how to carry out a conversation whenever it is that we needed to talk to somebody. In the sense of your formality and the way you dressed, oh, you had to be very modest.
Oh, is
Very
that what the
modest.
competition was? Was in the
Yes.
modesty of your
Yeah.
clothing?
And the modesty of how you would dress yourself, because obviously you didn't want to be a stumble
Would you
to the
say
sisters.
how silent you chose to be?
Uh, what do you mean?
So you mentioned earlier before the competitiveness that in marriage, and I'm phrasing here, it
Mm-hmm.
was a shame for the husband to not have taught his wife the doctrine at
Oh, yeah.
home.
Mm-hmm.
You went through you loved the doctrine enough, you embraced it enough that you would write down these questions
Mm-hmm.
that your husband didn't have, the husband at the time didn't have the answer to. And clearly he thought it okay for you to write these down and ask someone that they would hope would have the answer, right?
Yes.
But when you ask that question as a woman, you were it was taken as a slap to the face. How dare you think that you could ask me such an advanced doctrine question in
Mm-hmm.
front of everyone as a surprise?
Yeah.
Where if I were to ask, I would be praised for being a student of the doctrine.
Oh, yeah.
Were you expecting that same treatment? And I'm sorry that the answer is obvious, but I just have to ask.
No, you would expect, at least in my case, I would expect to have that same answer if a brother were to ask, because we were all learning. We were all disciples, right? That's what we would consider ourselves of the word of God. So if there was a time where nobody knew the answer, I mean, there's nothing wrong. I mean, you're not doing right or wrong in asking because you're trying to learn. And that was another thing in what I mentioned about competitive between each other as obreros, because there came a point, I do remember, especially from the new obreros, what they considered a part of the battalion, the sisters. And I mean, I get it. Now I understand. But before I would be like, why are they showing off? But it wasn't. It was just their desire to learn, to be of a help, to be taken into consideration. So maybe they can be more of a further help in the labor. It wasn't because they were trying to feel more than other sisters. I hope not, right? But that was also another I would consider it another type of yeah, challenge within the obreras, because there were some who were pretty much just going by the book. 5 a.m. prayers, 9 a.m. prayers, 6 p.m. choir, preaching. And if they didn't do that, oh, believe me, they would like make themselves suffer. Like they would cry their eyes out in the temple or in the congregation living room because they didn't fulfill what they were there to do.
I have a
But
So you're
question
as for
regarding that.
Go for it. Go for
uh-huh.
it.
I have a question regarding that, and it's
Yes.
actually more maybe a statement, but it's also a statement slash question. So I've always wondered, and I know the answer, but I want you to confirm it if you can. Yeah, is
Okay.
I've seen. I remember when Nason first came in, and in
Mhm.
Houston, many youth signed up for the labor, and it was just they took everybody, and then they said, "You go here, you go here, you go here, you go here." Right?
Yeah.
Do they to qualify to be in the labor as a youth? You give your 1 year, or you give your 2 years, or whatnot, right? Do you need to prove to whoever picks you? Actually, I kind of would like you. You kind of did it different because you got married, but you
Mhm.
probably know is how do they identify that that person is ready to go to the labor and they're biblical and they know they're, because I have to say, speaking the word of God, you have to have that gift and you have to have that memory of saying, como dice Kevin, you're like that. You talk
Mhm.
about something and you give the verse. I'm not. I know the verse, but I don't really remember what part of the Bible it is. You were way more holy roly than I was.
Me too. Right
But
now, me too.
Same.
what I'm saying is this: is that so? You guys go out and you go out to the labor, and who who thought who gave that evaluation and said, ex obrera, I think you have the qualifications to go out there. I believe you have the qualifications to go out there because you know the scriptures real well. You love the Lord. You're a Christian young lady, and I truly believe that you're going to do good out there because because the sad thing is when you go out there and you knock on people's doors, you need to know the scriptures pretty good.
Oh yeah.
So, did the people that you cross paths with, especially the girls that you cross paths with, I think the guys, did they know the scriptures really good to go out there and speak the doctrine of La Luz del Mundo?
And that's actually a really good point that you bring out, the Tavi, because I'm going to say when the battalion came in, my respects to like three, four brothers and like two sisters that were part of the group where I was at.
Mm-hmm.
I was just I was just astonished to see how well they knew the Bible. I was like, wow, like they're even better obrera than me, like better obreros than all of us put together. Because
Mm-hmm.
it's true, they dedicated most of their, yeah, like their adolescence, their young teenage years to the Bible, to all these biblical studies
Comes at a high
in the
cost.
cult.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And once they were called into the labor, how we would know, obviously we wouldn't like choose them or pick them one by one, test them out, but pretty much the responsible brother, he would just randomly, oh, hey, you're gonna take the prayer tomorrow. And out of all days, sometimes he wouldn't be in the prayers, he would. And obviously, since he had to give feedback to the ministers, he would write down his notes. And I'm saying this because there was a short time where me and my ex, well, pretty much, obviously, right? They don't take the sister into consideration. No, la hermana encargada, right? It's always the hermano encargado, the responsible brother. So my
Mm-hmm.
ex and I, we were in charge of the group. And the instructions we were given were always take note of how everybody's pretty much speaking when they're publicly speaking to the church, how they take their prayers, if they follow the points, point A, point B, point C, pretty much just, like, do they know how to take a prayer? Do they know how to unwrap this subject, especially the election? And based on that, whenever it is that we had ministers or whenever we needed to send a report, how are the brethren? Okay, we would scale them from 1 to 10, like we would write down who comes to church, who doesn't. But now comes the obreros. Who reads the Bible? Who's always active? Who's always in their prayers? Who sounds more fervent? I don't even know if that's the correct word, but in Spanish it was ferviente.
Ferviente, yeah.
Yeah.
Charisma. Yeah.
Yeah, like who pretty much pulls or catches the brethren's attention and just sparks that small fire to get the church started in their prayers. Exactly. So depending on who we told them, whenever it is that they would come, they would pretty much consider those obreros and taking them out with the ministers to go preach. And to us, that was a big privilege, right? Because we're like, wow, like they're new and they're being taken into consideration. Wow, like that's one of the biggest blessings you can have. And sometimes us having, I could say, like years in Dobra. Sometimes, I mean, you get shy when publicly speaking. Like even me right now, speaking and talking right now on this podcast, like I even get shy and I'm not even showing my face. So just imagine.
You
Just
speak you speak
imagine.
very gentle, and I love that about you. When I heard you with Hector, um, I love the your tone of voice, very humble, and that's why we wanted to have you as our guest. And some people have the
Thank
gift of
you.
public speaking,
Yeah.
Some people have the gift of learning the scriptures, but they don't have the
Yes.
gift of public speaking. And I think that with those two in a combination is good. But again, we not all of us. I was nervous when I first started. Now
Mm-hmm.
I just call Kevin. I go, okay, and let's do it.
I'm
Right?
ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, and something that I do remember right now, whenever it is that we would go out preaching, since my ex in that time he had work, I was supposed to go to kind of represent him. Oh, el hermano such and such. I'm not gonna say names, right? But he's working. Pero aquí está la esposa. Here's the wife. Okay, hi, peace of the Lord. My name is ex obrera, and these are my companions. Um, such person, such sister here, and we're here today to share with you the word of the Lord. Would you have a second? And we would see, okay, if they were the stubborn type of people, what we would consider, okay, such and such person, and come and do what you got to do because you know how to speak to them. Or other ones use the Bible because you know how to do it. So it just varied by group, I'm going to say, whenever it is that we would go out preaching.
Right.
I think they liked me because not trying to give myself all the credit, but
How will you,
whenever it
right?
is that I would go, I think what would also help was that I had my baby. So I was able to, just relate myself with those mothers that stood at home during the day. Hi, how are you? English or Spanish, whichever language they preferred. And yeah, like I would always have to take my biblical person and my charisma person, like
You have
let's
a
go.
charisma, that's for sure.
Yeah. And yeah, like that's how I would consider the competition within the labor, especially when you're starting off in a big group with obreros. You have to prove yourself in order
Right.
to receive a certain blessing,
Would
which
you,
is awkward, right? Now that you see
yeah,
it.
would you, for as soft spoken as you are, you're intelligent and it shows.
Hmm.
So, and I, how do I even go about it, right? I'm just gonna say it bluntly like this, but for as smart as you were, for as well versed as you could have been in the doctrine,
Hmm.
did it, would it ever be, would it ever matter in that sense, like when you were there, right? So, for example, when when I was at the peak of my time at the cult, I to achieve that I spent hours, and Thea, you're gonna love this piece. I spent hours when I work in construction, 6 to 7 hours a day, just listening on repeat to Antonio Adan. Whatever piece of doctrine, audio that I could find, I would constantly be playing it. Even if I wasn't paying attention, I was listening to it. And this multiplied by months leveled me up to a point where deacons wanted me to ride with them, go with them. They would do their supervision. I would take the prayer on their behalf. Like that, it started getting to those levels, right? For
Hmm.
me, it was a crowning achievement to understand that my effort, my sacrifice, my pride were all in display for everyone to see, to serve the apostle in my own way.
Hmm.
But what I'm coming to understand with everything, and God, it makes me want to cry. What I'm starting to understand based on everything you're telling me is that it didn't matter how smart you were, it didn't matter how well spoken you were. If it didn't benefit your husband, if it outshined your husband in any way, if it if it intellectually challenged a male's pride and a male's ego, you were shamed,
Yeah.
you were looked down upon.
Hmm.
So the very like it strikes me as insane because the same questions that I would ask, if you were to ask, not only would you not get your answer, you would be punished.
Yeah.
Does anybody listening right now, I know it's a recording, anyone listening know Who, what other kind of people go through the same thing? Slaves. I'm
Yeah.
not, I don't have to make it up. I don't. She just told you how she's lived, that she was a slave. And to question, to want to learn, the desire to be more intellectually for a woman, it truly wasn't allowed unless it benefited a man in one way or another.
Yeah.
Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, that's very accurate. Very accurate because I would feel back then useless. I would think to myself, well, what am I doing here? Like if I can't be a help to the church, if I can't be of a help or a virtuous wife to my husband, I would think to myself, what the heck am I doing here wasting this brother's time? O sea, my ex, right? Like he
Yeah.
could have somebody so much better than me. And if
Yeah.
that wasn't the thought at the moment, the other thought that I would get would be, I need to step it up because I'm embarrassing him. How are we going to be sent to a church if I can't be of a help? That's how extreme it was because it goes back to what I'm saying, competition between the couples. You had to prove yourself that you were one of the best ones. So hopefully that following August or May, they would send you somewhere and you would be seen, felt like you were the most important obrero, and you wouldn't be obrero no more. You'd be considered encargado, official encargado.
Hmm.
So it was very stressful for me. It was tiring, mentally stressful. I would get anxiety from these things to the point where sometimes my husband at the time, he would come like, "Why are you crying? You wouldn't understand. Why are you crying?"
You
And I would
wouldn't
just, like
understand.
just spill it out. It's because you don't get it. Like maybe we weren't meant to be. It's because, like I see how biblical you are and I'm just trying to learn and I'm not being of a help. And then the brother tells me this. I feel stupid. And I'm sorry, I feel like a
Yeah.
dumbass. I feel retarded. I don't even know what to say, but I
You know
feel
what's
like
really
I'm
hard?
trying to help. That's what I would tell
Yeah.
him.
Yeah. You know what's hard to understand as a woman, outside La Luz del Mundo right now is like, I'm just a wife.
Yeah.
I'm just a mom.
Yeah.
I work full time. My role as a mom is to guide my kids. Even now, I have three that are in college, but my
Hmm.
role is to keep them focused and what's priority. When my husband comes home, to greet him and to be happy and to keep my house clean. That's it.
Yeah.
But this ex obrera has gone through hell and back.
Yeah.
You went through that marriage that you wanted to be a good wife and you wanted to be a good mommy,
Hmm.
but then you also have the task of literally making sure that you were shining for your husband and making you had the task of making sure that you learn as much as you can because you wanted to move on because you go
Yeah.
through so much as a being in the labor that it's just you had a double whammy, mija. And I'll tell you something. I wish I could write with my pen. You have the name Ex Obrera right there under your name, and I wish I could put a crown on top of it and say, "You earned that crown, mija. You're not in the Obra anymore, and you know what? So what? Now you're living a life. Now you can be a full time mom and a full time wife, but you're not. But you don't have that pressure anymore of you know quedando bien, trying to stand out, to make my husband proud, to make the servant of God proud of me, all that stuff. It's like, man, you talk about that name that you have, mija, ex obrera.
Yeah.
It fits you perfect. You just have to put a whole crown on the top because um, your testimony is, and it's not, it's, I mean, you're speaking it out, but can you imagine how many girls are going through that in la obra? That's sad.
It's sad because pretty much what this cult does to you, it suppresses
Does.
it suppresses us,
Exactly.
but it also suppresses the feeling of you trying to serve and be of a good cause to the brothers because you have to prove yourself, you have to exceed. those expectations so you can become somebody in
Exactly.
this place. And it shouldn't be like that because
Uh,
I compare it now that because of how I mentioned, I remarried, I did my life, and I married now. And honestly, he's a great guy. He's a great and awesome husband. And something that I sometimes still struggle with is self doubt.
Mhm.
And that's because I'm not trying to make myself sound like, oh, I feel sorry for her. Like, I don't want nobody to have pity for me. I'm just explaining and just
Mhm.
telling the audience exactly how I feel sometimes because that's something everybody in the church had. We needed to kind of doubt ourselves. We couldn't see ourselves
Mhm.
as potential people or people capable of doing beyond more than what we were expected because it's either, oh, you think you're more than everybody or you feel that you're a saint when it wasn't like that, you know.
is it
I
what you
don't
struggle? Is
know.
the self-worthy? Is what
I'm sorry.
you struggle with? Do you struggle of giving yourself that worth? Self-worthy.
Sometimes, yes. And my husband, he tells me now, he's like, don't forget, you're married to me, not to everybody else.
That's
And I
awesome.
told him, I'm sorry. It's because, I went through so much. And obviously, how I've told you, Tia Tabby, like he's Catholic, so they don't understand
Yeah.
this type of
Right.
like mind controlling system that we were in for so many years. How it sculpted us mentally to become a certain way. So even now that we're out of the cult, I see it like this. Like sometimes I doubt myself. I'm like, I can't do this. I can't do that. But then I remember I'm not in there anymore. I'm able to do that and much more. And I can prove myself. And I don't have to be a Christian to be a good person. We just have to be good people from the bottom of our hearts. So that was something that the church does play a major role in
They ingrained
mentally.
it in your head. They
Yes,
do.
yes,
I'm gonna make a point right there. You mentioned that he's a good guy and a great husband. I consider myself that way as well. But the one thing that even now that I'm beginning to see, I'm beginning to finally understand is that we can be in the same room, but we're not living the same experience. And you're right, as a Catholic, he won't understand, aside from the doctrinal differences, but
yeah.
also because he's a guy
Mm-hmm.
and his worst experiences won't ever compare. Well, you know what I mean in the sense of religion, it won't ever compare to a woman
Yeah.
in a cult, suppressed, and to all of that. Like, and the one thing that I would say to any guy listening, and it, you tell me if this is true. My greatest achievement as a brother in that cult would be to stand in pride in the pulpit and proclaim the apostle's name and to have everyone's recognition as a open, faithful follower of the apostle, especially in the I've heard, body of ministers or ministros. Like the higher the rank, the more privilege came my way. But your greatest achievement as a woman was to be at my side as I achieved all these things, and you were just a compliment that went along with that. That
Yeah.
would have been your greatest achievement to have helped me be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Your second greatest achievement was how good you were at keeping your mouth quiet in the presence of the doctrine when it was being spoken. And you were not to speak unless you were spoken to. And depending how graceful you were with that, that would also be considered an achievement for you.
Oh yeah.
How is that a fucking achievement? It's not.
It's not.
It's not
And
an no. It's just not.
don't forget the second or third greatest achievement of a woman within the light of the world was to make sure your children knew the love to the election and were very biblical over all things.
over all
Right.
things.
It
Yeah,
was a priority.
it was a priority, exactly.
So
Because if
let's
you had children
yeah,
and if they didn't know who Hermano Nazon or in that time
Papa,
Hermano
Papa
Samuel
Samuel.
were, oh my, yeah, Papa Samuel, oh my
you're right.
goodness,
You're
you have
right.
failed as a wife. You
You're
have
right.
failed as a mother.
I remember my nieces. Um, they knew all about Papa Nason, picture on the wall and all that. But when they could speak, they knew about Nason. But when I asked them about God, who was the creator, who was the source creator, they didn't know anything about him. And that struck me in such a way when I was in the cult, in my peak, because I always understood that the apostle served God. How do you know? How do you not know about the? How do you know about the servant but not the master? Why do you praise the master? I mean, why do you praise the servant but not the master? You know what I'm saying? Like that.
Yes.
That it blows my mind. But for the sake of time, everyone that's listened so far, this has been in a nutshell pieces of her experience in
So
Australia.
much of a story.
So what? And I guess I'm going to pull up a question here, and I'll edit this piece out for myself. Okay, remind me again, how many people were living in that house in
Eight,
Australia?
18, 18 people.
18. Okay, so 18 people. Uh, we were all in
17,
together,
18
18 people,
around there. Yeah.
17, 18.
Yeah.
Towards, were there any moments specifically towards the end of your time in Australia? Or should I say, towards the end of your time in Australia, what did that look like? Was your understanding of the illusion of Obrera, was it still the same? Did you still convince yourself that you were doing the very best thing ever in the world, even though you went through humiliation, embarrassment, shame, self-doubting, judgment from the very people that you're supposed to love and be loved by as
Mm-hmm.
companions in the labor? Did you still convince yourself of holding on to that optimism, or was your now understanding more broken?
In my experience, I recall that once we were getting to the end of our time in Australia, at well, for me, it was obviously different from my ex-husband back in that time, but for me, looking back from when the time I had started to the time that it was up for us to leave Australia, I felt confused. Honestly, it was confusion because I thought to myself, okay, we're going to leave Australia. Okay, perfect. We had our good times, we had our bad times, we had our moments where we just wanted to give up, completely give up, especially because of the things we went through and how we would see that sometimes there wasn't any help from supposedly the ones who were supposed to be guiding us, in this case, the ministers. And sometimes we didn't even have the help from, the main person who was the apostle, right? In this case, Nason, when they were supposed to give him the good news or the bad news, which I doubt they would give him bad news about Australia. It was
Right.
always the good things. We were going through a lot of struggles. So at the end, I said to myself, do I really want to keep going? Or should I just speak up to my husband and be like, hey, you know what? Yeah, I give up. I don't want to do this no more, because who suffer more are the children. Because we can take certain sufferings, we can, just take it in and go to sleep and say, you know what, tomorrow's going to be a brand new day, sorry. But then for children, they don't understand because they don't have a normal lifestyle. They don't have that privacy. They don't have the freedom to be able to express themselves as children. And
Right.
over in Australia, I thought to myself, depending on where they're going to send us, do I really want to keep going? But then again, if I say no, And if he still wants to, it's going to be a major problem for him. We're going to have conflict because I'm going to be against it while he's still in it. So what should I do?
Gaining
And
glory.
we
Yeah.
would have we would hear that usually the obreros from Australia were sent automatically to Hawaii. I would think to myself, well, I am somewhat biblical. I know the scriptures. I am a pretty much a devoted obrera in the sense of working in activities, visiting brothers and sisters, whoever need the help. And we would hear things, bad things, okay, about Hawaii. So I'm like, I think this is gonna be the point where I'm gonna learn if I still want to be in the obra or not. I never mentioned it to my ex-husband at first that I didn't want to, but then I said, you know what? What the heck? Let's go for it. I'm just gonna put these feelings aside and we'll just give it a shot. If we like it, we'll stay. And if he still likes it, then he can stay. Cause I was at a point where it got to my mind just separating because I didn't want to follow
Did you have
him
a
because
choice?
of
Did
so
you have a
many
choice to
things.
go to Hawaii?
I'm sorry?
Did you have a choice to go to Hawaii?
Not in a way because we never got the question, how do you guys feel? Where would you guys want to go? It was just we and I'm
Did
gonna
you
say
choose
it
to?
shortly, not that I want to bring Hawaii up into the subject right now at least, but I do remember that instead of asking us like, how are you guys feeling? Do you guys want to take a certain time off or just, go visit your family or something like that, because pretty much you're a
Right.
prisoner, you're a slave, so you have no
You are.
choice when you're in Obrero to be able to go out there, take a few days, a few weeks. No, like hermano, brother, I want to go visit my family. What for? Why? What's going on? If you were one of the favorites, yeah, they'd allow you to go. And if you weren't, hermana, aquí hay trabajo, there's work here, servant of God needs you here. Okay, fine, like you don't have a choice, especially because we were under that system that we didn't have enough money of our own to be able to travel somewhere outside of Australia. Even within Australia, it was expensive. So when we left Australia, we were waiting. We were pretty much pending on the wait list, and Uciel told us, if you guys want to prove to me that you guys are still wanting to be in the obra, I expect you guys here tomorrow. Okay, so me, my ex-husband, and our friend who also he came along with us. We got to California. We rented a car and we drove it to Arizona, where Uciel was at the time in Phoenix. We
How did
get
you guys
there.
get here? Did you pay for your own trip or did they pay you?
Oh no, we paid everything. Our way back, um, we paid our, what is it? The rental. And I mean, since I do have family in California, well, and our friend did too. We were both originally from there.
Mhm.
He went to go visit his family for like a day or 2 or 3 days, I want to say. And out of nowhere, like, hey, mom, we got to go because Hermano Ciel called us and we have to go. He said if we're still thinking of being in Dobra, he expects us. O sea, he didn't even give us a choice. He's like, I'm waiting for you guys tomorrow here at this time. So we literally got our stuff and we left over there. And once we get there, um, he just said, ¿Cómo se sienten? ¿Listos para ir a Hawaii? I'm in. Just like that. How are you guys feeling? You guys ready to go to Hawaii? I'm going to make a call just to verify you guys are going to be sent to Hawaii, and that's it. Not even
Oh
asking
man.
us how you guys were, like, what did you guys think these 4 or 5 years, or what, 8 years that you guys were there, or whatever time it is that everybody had, right? Individually.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to stop it right here. I have to stop it. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm doing the same thing I did last time. It's my job to make sure that her story is properly flushed out and that we've gone through everything. But we also have to respect the time limit that everyone loves us for.
Yeah.
So these are the points that I want to touch upon before we go into Hawaii, right? And it
Mhm.
won't be right now because we're just going to give our closing remarks on everything, right? But I want you to think about this for the next time. You talk about confusion towards the end of the time there in Australia, to the point where you had clear feelings of wanting to separate from your husband,
Mhm.
to not live this life anymore. I want to expand that further. I want to know, when was it at its peak? Was it a multiple gradual conversation you had with yourself that convinced you out of it? To me, based on what you told me, it sounds like you took the experience of Australia as a one time type of thing, that it could be different, right? I don't know if
Mhm.
that's 100% the case. The other piece, and I don't want you to answer it because it's going to be a cliffhanger question. The other one is, the children suffered the most. One of the hardest things to ever talk about is children, because of how difficult and how sensitive that conversation is. We avoid it because it's easier to just say the children suffered and move on, or just say that
Yes.
they went through this and move on. But I have a child, and I am lucky enough to experience his progress every single day. And I see how he expresses himself fully. He dances fully. He sings. No shame of how bad he's singing because he's a toddler, right? All of that stuff I know because I lived the experience of being told, cállate. Esas cosas son del diablo. They're from the devil, right? So I want to expand. I want to talk about more of what you're willing to share, of maybe the things that you even had to say to your children that you felt was ridiculous, but you had to obey the doctrine.
Mhm.
And I really want to take my time with that. I promise everyone, the Hawaii story is just as good as the Australia story.
It gets way
Um,
better.
but there is one of the things
Yeah.
with children is that they are the literally the most innocent
Yeah.
form of
Innocent, pure
consciousness
heart
in this
human.
world,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yin yang.
and we mold them, and they become a reflection of our structure. So just imagine, go back into your life and imagine wanting to listen to like a pop song. Imagine hearing a really good song, and you, a child, you want to dance, and you just get slapped in the hand, or slapped in the mouth, or pulled by the ear, or in my case, my mom knows this. We've talked about it. It's all good. Pull me by the back of my hair, the mi colita, right? Because
Mhm.
my hair will grow. Like, and being told, no, that's wrong. Something so natural, that's wrong.
Yeah.
Something so natural, that's wrong, right? So all of that kind of gives you a full glimpse, a better glimpse of our mentality growing up there, right?
Yeah.
So my closing remarks, I just want to cry. Um, I, because of you, and I want to say this, because of your story, because of how you've expressed yourself, I found myself in, sometimes when you would say whoever was standing at the pulpit that had the most grace, I remembered standing at the pulpit hoping that I had the most grace to impress them. I remember telling my wife, like telling Dira, who was just on, like on the last episode, telling her openly with pride, I'm going to go high into this, like as high as I possibly can. And you're going to be with me every step of the way. Because para mí, tú eres mi costilla. And your greatest achievements are going to be what I achieve, not what you achieve.
Mhm.
And what I loved about her in the cult was is that she was quiet. She was silent. She had that, what I in the cult called that elegance, esa gracia, the virtue of being of intelligent but quiet woman, knowing when was her place to speak. I took pride that she had that, and I was shocked when I come to find out, imagine my shock, something so obvious to any woman listening. Imagine my shock when a guy, when your husband, when your significant other finds out you have an opinion about something. You don't feel the same way as she does about something. Your approach is entirely different. And imagine having to accept that and work it out and build new paths in your relationship that allows you to properly communicate. Something so simple and
Yeah.
so basic to couples that was stripped of men, and it was replaced with machismo in a
You
sense.
know what? You know what, Kevin? What you're saying right now, because of how I heard and I saw Dina yesterday. What was it? Monday. Monday. How she expresses herself and she carries herself. It's amazing how the cult kept her quiet because she's very, very outspoken and she speaks
Now she is,
very
yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And I love that about her. Pero lo que es that in church, that's what they teach you to keep you back and keep you quiet.
Yeah.
But the wonderful thing about it is that the Lord chilled you to begin with because you thought you were all that in a bag of chips because you're the man of the household in La Luz del Mundo. You know what I mean? But I
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
love your heart. I love how you. It's not that I love seeing you tear up, but I see how you love your wife so much, and you're going, "Wow, I can't believe I did that. I saw you do that with her the other day." And she goes, I don't remember. She's so cute. Todavía, she's so humble about it. I don't remember, honey. He goes, no, I did that, you know? And because they suppress you. La Luz del Mundo suppresses women to that. But, when she had the opportunity, amazingly to say, she was the one that saw it first. She was the one that saw, hmm, something's wrong. Wasn't she with a, or did you guys see it together? That
What do you
something
mean?
con La Luz del Mundo and the whole thing with Nasol. Who saw it first, you or her, or together?
Um, we saw it together because of the privileges I enjoyed, and yo era bien chismoso con ella. I would tell her everything that would happen behind the scenes, very
See,
much
I love
behind the
that.
scenes.
Yeah, and I
Um,
love that.
It,
That
it
that
wasn't it wasn't chismosa, it was communication. Good
yeah,
communication
yeah,
skills.
yeah.
communication
Oh,
skills.
es que se joder. Oh my God. Thank you very much for that. Um, and the main thing that I want to say to you, because you're so intelligent. I see it. You're so soft spoken but intelligent, and that can easily be overlooked because of how soft spoken you are. But I want you to know that as someone that lived the other side, enjoyed the other side foolishly, I see you. And I'm sorry. And I know that I don't have any place, but it's just how I feel right now. I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. I really am.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that as a member. I mean it as a guy. Like hearing this stuff, I would how fucking dare you speak to me in that way? How dare you think that I would even submit myself? How dare you think I would be quiet? All these things that seem so basic to me were stripped from you.
Yeah.
And you were made to live that life that I would refuse to live. And then I believed that it was okay. So, I mean, I'm going to have a conversation with Dira after this, but I just want you to know like, I see you.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, and I know many other men also see it now too. So
Yes.
thank
And
you for helping me get to that point. Thank you.
yes. And I mean, you're welcome. And it's not because I want to prove a point. It's just it's necessary to speak
Yeah.
about these things because us as women in the cult, we are always silenced. Believe it or not, to our
Suppressed.
audience, we are always silenced. And I'm not speaking um, in a way of violence
No.
because that's a whole different story from things we've heard about, crimes committed, but mentally, how you say, Tia Tabi, as well, they suppress women. And we are not ourselves. We don't see our full potential. We are not let For us, we are not permitted for us to grow as humans, because whatever it is that we say, if it favors your spouse, oh, way to go. You did a great job there. But if it ashames them or if it humiliates them,
It's your fault.
entre comillas, supposedly, right? If we make our spouses feel humiliated, and I'm speaking male, oh my God, they rebuke you.
Hmm.
They
You're a
expose you.
Jezebel. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
They compare you to the worst characters of the Bible.
yeah.
And if you don't know how to manage your household, women, us speaking in the church, if you don't know how to manage your house or your family, you have failed as a sister, as a believer of Christ, and as a believer of the election. You have failed. What are you doing with your life? And that's why I said the ones who suffer the most are the children, because in my experience, having little children back to back, I had two. Now I see it differently. It's a blessing, obviously. It's a huge responsibility, but they don't know what's wrong or right. So it's true, Kevin, what you say. You mold them to how you want them to be. So you shape them in a certain form. And sometimes that form isn't healthy for children. And as a matter of fact, majority of the kids that are still in La Luz del Mundo, whether you're an obrero or a member, they do not have a normal lifestyle
No.
because everything revolves around this cult, this family, the Joaquines. So no matter what you do, no matter, kids by nature, they're just a sponge where they absorb everything they see around them, not just at home. So they hear music, they hear certain things, they do funny stuff, funny movements, they dance. They're kids, they're growing up, they're experiencing
Yeah.
so many different things. But then here come the La Luz del Mundo parents, and that's where you shut them out. You shut them down. You shut them out of certain things. You make them pretty much useless people outside of the
Especially the
church,
boys.
especially the boys, because you implant in their minds, no, you have to be this way because you're an hermano of La Luz del Mundo. You have to show the world that, and that's where the machismo starts. And I have to say it because many women, subconsciously or unconsciously, we would teach our children, boys, oh, no, 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 let your sister do it for you. Oh, no, 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 no.
Yep.
If they
Mm-hmm.
speak like that, don't let them. Don't let yourself. And I mean, it's good for us to teach them how to respect themselves and how to give respect. But in the cult, um, it's it's a sort of system where they teach the girls, daughters, oh, do this for your brother, do that for your brother, or help him out. O sea,
Mm-hmm.
like we become slaves, exactly, without even us knowing. They expect us to be submissive, even from a young age. And I just have to say it because it's true.
It
It's
is
very true. And
very
I
true.
feel sorry because I feel sorry for my kids. Not that I want to extend this podcast, this episode a bit longer, but I just have to say it.
Say it.
I feel sorry that my children had to grow up, and I don't want to get emotional, but it just hurts me because my children, my first two, they went through a lot. I I'm going to say, and I'm sorry,
Say it.
I wasn't a great mother. I pretty much I pretty much did what I was told to do, and I had to punish my kids in a sort of way that isn't normal in society because I didn't want to be an embarrassment to my ex-husband. So there I go, punishing my children for stupid things that the church imposes on you as a parent. Hermana, your kids, they need to learn how to behave. Hermana, your kids need to learn how to like stay quiet and respect their brothers. I'm like, they're children. They're just excited to see other kids here. Or for any little thing. Or if they didn't know who Apostol Nason was, and if they didn't learn or they didn't want to cooperate, There you go, punishing them. Oh, you're in timeout. You can't play here. You can't do this. You can't do that. Limiting, limiting them. And
Yeah.
my kids grew up their first 5 years. I'm going to say my kids suffered a lot, and not just my kids. I'm speaking in general for all the hijos de hermanos obreros who've had children. And when you're a fanatic, this is what happens. And your kids grow up with certain resentment against you sometimes. And not even that, sometimes they reject religion because of the way they grew up the first few years. Because even though we say, oh, they're just kids, they're not going to remember. Believe me, they remember. And just how you can say, like, oh, I've spoken to my mom about these things and we're cool on your experiences. I also remember how my mom treated me when I was a kid and my brothers, how we were punished, unfairly punished sometimes for things we didn't even do, but because we needed to be an example, because my mom was a very active member. Hermana, look at your kids. They were just kids, running around, not even during church hours. You're talking about hours way before church time, the prayers. And Ivan, there they go, punishing us as kids because we're not supposed to behave this way. We're not supposed to do this. We're not supposed to question La Familia Joaquin. Oh my God, like so many things. And it's something that traumatizes you for the rest of your life
Yes.
because of the way you grow up and because how you grow up as a member and now you're a full grown adult. And especially if you have the blessing of being in the obra, you want to be better than how you were, than how your parents were with you. And sometimes us as parents, we make the mistake in trying to correct our kids in the wrong form
Yep.
because there's a place, there's a way. And now that I'm not in this religion and you inform yourself with psychology or with whatever it is that you do, right? When you read and you learn these teachings that we taught to our children are not normal,
They're
that's when
not.
you realize, what the hell was I doing with my kids?